right, welcome everybody. My name is Nicole Dessain. I'm the founder of the HR.Hackathon Alliance. We're a community of HR rebels who believe in the power of human-centered design to tackle some of our most complex workplace challenges. Just if you want to give me a show of hand, virtual hand or real hand, if this is your first HR.Hackathon Alliance event. All right, well, welcome, and everybody else, welcome back. Um, just a few words about who we are for those who are new. So we were founded in 2019 and really based on a very hyper-local format where we conduct hackathons, ideation events around some of our workplace challenges, and we're across the world at this point. We have 3,600 community members. Um, we generated over 850 ideas, I think about 1,000 at this point now. They're all on our website, hrhackathonalliance.com, open source, so people who couldn't attend can, view the ideas thematically. We work with our local HR Hackathon Alliance hosts across several cities where they facilitate these events. And then starting in the pandemic, during the pandemic, we started doing these hackathons virtually and also added some other programming to it. And that's what we're doing today. So we are having a conversation about human-centric AI. And I'm super excited to have Christopher Lind with us today. And as he pointed out, we know each other for evidently more than 10 years. I didn't think I was that old, but okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. So, and we've been, in touch. We were coworkers and then have been on others' podcasts and things like that. And what I remember about you, Christopher, is that you always were tinkering with the latest technology. You were in L&D and you'll tell us a little bit more about yourself, but
Yeah.
you always had, the latest thing in mind. So I wasn't surprised when AI was sort of the thing you picked up and you're really running with that. Um, so what Christopher does, among other things, he posts sort of videos on LinkedIn and where he kind of deconstructs some of these AI news and things like that I follow and that I find super helpful. So, and we're both, very much straight talkers. So the title of today's session is Beyond the Buzz and the BS. And, my excuse is I'm German. I don't know what yours is, Christopher, but but so, we
This is
very
my
much,
personality, I
there you
guess.
go. We very much jam, very much real talk. And so what we'll do is we'll start with the questions that I had, and then some of you submitted beforehand. Thank you so much for that. Um, and then please put um, additional questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll just pick them up throughout and in the end. So, Christopher, welcome.
Thank you.
As a way of introduction, why don't you tell us a little bit about your AI journey?
Yeah. So what's funny about it is going back to your point, like my background's actually more in tech
Mm,
than people, which is funny because it's like, well, but your career's been in learning, right? And I'm like, sort of, those were the job titles, but yeah, in a sense. So it's funny when I talk to people about AI because AI kind of became a popular commonplace thing recently, but it's not new. And so
mm,
for me, I was doing automation and, a lot of AI transformation stuff decades ago. So I think that's kind of the journey where I've always been looking at what is the most effective use of people's time. I'm big on efficiency, which has also been influenced. I have 8 kids, so it's all about time management.
mm-hmm,
And so I think that's always been part of my career is figuring out what is the best use of my time and the things that aren't a good use of my time. Like, how do I still manage them, but then also keep things moving? Then 2022 hit. And when OpenAI released ChatGPT, I went, we're in for a world of hurt because people are not prepared for what this is. And not just even on a technically standpoint, but I was like, this is identity shaking for people. And so when ChatGPT started picking up and I saw the adoption numbers, which was, I mean, it's the fastest adoption we've ever had of any technology in human
mm-hmm,
history. I went, people are going to need some help just understanding what this is and actually breaking it down And that's really when I started focusing a lot more attention on, I just want people to understand what AI is, what it isn't, how to use it, the risks associated with it, because it's the most powerful catalyst we've ever had. And
Mm,
that can be really good. It can, amplify and accelerate good things, and it can be really, really, really bad. And I've seen people get seriously hurt who just were like, but all I was doing was this. And you're like, right. And that can be really dangerous. So that's where for me, it's important. I care a lot about it. And having 8 kids, I'm like, the decisions we make today have generational implications. So that's kind of the why and the
mm,
background I have in some of this.
mm,
And we worked at CEC together,
mhm,
and at the time it was about how do we actually help enable people and make them successful with tech. So I guess I'm still doing that, just in a
mm,
different capacity.
mm. Thank you. I love that. And we'll dive into some of the challenges you hinted at in a little bit. So let's just start with there was a recent report that came out from MIT
Mm-hmm.
that made headlines
Yeah, it did.
because
It's even
they
affected the stock market. It's like
it
made so
affected
many different.
I'm not surprised where the headline is 95% of AI pilots fail, I believe.
Yep.
Peel for us a little bit that onion and what's your take on that headline?
So I actually this week, so I also write on Substack, and my article this week was specifically on that, like billion spent, 5% success. Like that sounds terrible. I understand why in many cases the stock market took a hit. AI companies everywhere are freaking out. Everybody's kind of now wondering like, wait, was this all like a big bubble that popped? Which to me was really unfortunate because I talked to a lot of people. I'm like, did you actually read the report? Well, no, but I heard it was a 95% fail on pilots. I'm like, that's not really what the report said. Like it did, but it also didn't. And so the statistic, just if you haven't read the report, is 95% of like task specific AI failed. That was the statistic. 40% of general AI is proving successful. So like it's a
General
misleading statistic.
AI like ChatGPT.
Yeah, as in like
Yep.
companies that are implementing Copilot or Gemini or
Hmm.
general AI tools, people are finding in general, like, yeah, we're getting a lot of value out of it. And so it's like, okay, well, one, that's already misleading in that. Then on top of it, one of the staggering statistics, I'm like, this should have every HR executive and every company executive losing sleep is 90% of people are using AI tools as part of their day-to-day work, which is like, wait, what? 9 in 10 people are already using this on a day-to-day basis. And in the report, only 40% of companies have approved AI tools in there. And I'm like, that means you got a ton of people just doing Lord knows what with the tech, and they're finding success in it, which I would think would make every company go, we kind of need to get a handle on what this is and not necessarily to control it. And I actually think that's what the MIT report reveals is a lot of companies are trying to run AI through compliance and specific, like we got to apply it to this thing. And it's like, that's probably not the best way to apply it. I mean, can it? Yes. And when you dig into some of the data in the report and just my own experience with working with companies, part of the reason the task specific AI stuff is failing is they're skipping all the steps we know is important for digital transformation. A lot of these task specific ones, you get into it and you're like, what problem are you trying to solve? Who's in the room? Do you have the right people here? How are you going to measure success? And it's like, oh, well, we just bought this system and we're hoping it was going to work. And you're like, well, I mean, are you surprised 95% are failing? But then when you get into the ones where, I mean, I can tell you my success rate is way higher than 5%. So either I'm just really, really, really lucky or it has more to do with how you do it. But I think it's some of these other stats that companies are missing, and I think that's the disappointing thing about that report is a lot of
Hmm.
people are reacting to this one very specific metrics that does not tell the whole story, which in the age of misinformation, that doesn't surprise me one bit.
Mm. So it's not so much about re that it should repel people from embracing or companies from embracing AI. It's more being thoughtful about how they implement it. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be a
Mm,
big part of it. And I think one of the other things that comes out of that, that is one of the biggest thing missed about AI is everybody is focused on, because that 90% adoption rate to me is like, that is telling right now, is everybody's using it. But if you go to almost any company and say, how well do your people know how to use AI? it's it's crickets. They haven't really defined, like, well, what does that mean? What are we looking for? How do we assess that? And so that that's a big miss for companies, is they say they need people to be good with AI. They're bringing in all this AI tech, they're doing all this stuff, but going back to what matters to us and probably a lot of people on this call is, yeah, but that's a people question.
hmm
And that is something that is rarely on companies' radar, which, given the stats in this report, I'm like, that is a huge miss. Huge miss.
So it's the people side, and that's the good. That's the transition to kind of I think where we want to head with our conversation is it's
Yeah.
the people side and human-centric AI. But so what's a narrative about AI transformation that you hear repeatedly that you would like to change or challenge?
um, this one's held by, and I see some of the questions in the chat, so we'll get to those too. I think the narrative I would challenge right now is, I feel like there's this very binary view of AI right now, and that view is, it's either going to be the savior of humanity. It's going to fix everything that we've ever broken. It's going to solve all our problems. We're going to live forever. It's going to, we're going to be on islands drinking Mai Tais. Or it's the apocalypse, and you better build a bunker in your backyard, because by 2030, if anybody's looked at AI 2027, it's a website all about, like, what could happen. And it's a valid assessment, like, it's not wrong. But I think this, like, so is it going to kill us, or is it going to make everything better? I'm like, that's not really how you should be approaching it. And as much as people, say, I don't really buy into either of those, when you actually dig beneath the surface, that's actually what's driving a lot of anxiety and stress in people. Is there is this sense of, like, yeah, that's not really true, is it? And I think that's what is very concerning. And I would go, well, they're they're both possibilities, yes, but there's a lot more in between. And I wish we spent more time on the what's in between that. What's in between, it's the end of the world or it's the beginning of utopia, that we actually can do. Because I feel like a lot of people are kind of waiting for one of those two outcomes. And I'm like, that's not where you need to be right now.
And somebody in the chat said, it seems like the wild, wild west. So, when you say
Yeah.
this, we should be doing something in the middle, there's the question that was tied in by this person saying, then what should companies be doing?
Yeah. So I think a couple things that I encourage for anybody that I work with is, and it's one of the, I did develop this, but I'm not saying this because this is what I do. One of the biggest things I recognize everybody was missing was, what does effective AI use mean? We say we want people using AI, but what does that really mean? Does that mean prompting? Does that mean, like, what is that? And so I laid out 6 disciplines that I'm like, these are the things you should be looking in for in people to assess AI. Now, every company I work with, sometimes they're like, well, ours might be a little different. And I'm like, I mean, what? It's kind of like leadership. Everybody's like, well, we got a different approach to leadership. And you're like, okay, fine. Like, I'll give you that if you want, but really we're just swapping names. And so for a lot of organizations, I'm like, if you don't know what that is, if you have not defined that, you need to define that, and you need to communicate that to people so that they can start to say, here's what I'm shooting towards. Because right now, most people don't know what they're shooting towards. And unfortunately, that's leaving a lot of people going, more and faster is effective. If I produce more, if I do something faster, then I'm good with AI. And that is actually the absolute worst metric you can be using to assess whether you're effective with AI. And so for companies, and this is where I think HR can actually be a huge voice in the room to go, we need to know, what does AI effectiveness look like in our people, because 90% of people are using it and they have no benchmark of what good looks like or what we should be shooting at, and we can assess that. There's a way to do it. I mean, I know because I built a tool that can do it, that can assess people, so you can go, all right, now we know where people are, we know where our gaps are, we can do something about it. And it's on a general level that allows companies to take action on, boy, we're really low in this area. If we are going to proceed with AI, we better make sure we have tools and resources to support people in this. Instead of right now, what's happening, it's like people are opening a LinkedIn library or a, brilliant library and going, hey, everybody, like, go learn about AI. It's like, what does that mean? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. And I think that's actually one of the best places companies can start, because then you actually start at the root of the problem, which is people not knowing what to do or how to do it. It's like, well, now we've equipped them to know what to do. Does that mean you don't try and do targeted task specific stuff? No, you still should, but at least you want to make sure everybody is on the same page with what does good look like, so that when they're off using Copilot or Gemini to do something, you at least aren't worried, are they going to create something that's going to end us up in court or, getting somebody fired type of a thing. You want to make sure you got that covered.
Hmm. Okay. Cool. I think we addressed some of the additional questions for now.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
going
we
to come.
covered some, because even Adam, your question at the top
I
was kind
think
of
you
like the
just covered
tools
that,
and
right?
frameworks.
Yeah,
Yeah, some of these things around. And there is a lot more consistency. The one thing I
I'm gonna
will
go.
say
Hmm.
is a lot of companies are trying to like redefine their own, thing. And I get every company has to kind of put their cultural flair and lens on what that looks like, but it is pretty consistent. If like I use the analogy of leadership, like every company kind of thinks, leaders are different here. I think HR professionals, we all know, like, not really. Like, there might be nuances, but a good leader is a good leader. And I think the same thing is true with AI frameworks and things like that. Like, is there a magic tool that's better than others? No. When people are like, do we get Gemini or Anthropic or OpenAI? I'm like, I mean, well, I think that's the wrong. I mean, it's a good question to be asking, but sometimes it's more, well, how are we actually thinking about it? So,
Yeah. One more question that just dives a little bit deeper because you mentioned success factors or
yep.
defining value, whatever. So somebody asked, are there any specific metrics to measure AI effectiveness?
So, one of the ones that I think is really valuable for HR professionals really to lean in on right now. One, this adoption score is huge. And it's just every company should at least be going like, hey, we should know like how widespread is adoption here. And we should know adoption as in general, and then specific to the tools that we're using. Because that I think helps HR people know like, okay, where are we at with some of this stuff? The other one though that matters a lot is trust. And most people are like,
Mm,
trust? Why that? And I'm like, that is probably one of the biggest AI metrics every HR professional should be tracking right now, is what is organizational trust right now?
mm,
Because everybody is afraid AI is coming for their job. It's everywhere. Every big tech CEO is saying, we're going to see unemployment in this number. Every company sent out the we're AI first, and now, what does that mean in terms of numbers? And so organizational trust is a really strong indicator of how well you're doing with AI right now, because it's like, if your trust scores are high, you're doing some things right, because in a lot of organization, trust scores are low. Another one that again I think is relevant to business and HR leaders is engagement. And I know it's like, well, that's kind of a duh. Like, shouldn't we? Yeah, but you should be watching that right now. Because going back to the fact that AI is an amplifier, and everybody right now is defining success as faster and more, burnout is some of the highest it's ever been. The number of people I talk to who are like, I thought AI was supposed to make like my life easier and better. I feel like I'm working more and it never ends. I have one friend he's in the software engineering thing. He's like, now that AI is generating code, I've got a workload that's 10 times what it was because now I've got to approve and review AI code at levels I've never done before. And so burnout is a huge risk. And there's this idea, going back to one of your questions earlier, what's one of the narratives that I would want to change? I'm kind of a math and physics geek too, but like, so you can't create productivity. And that's one of the myths right now is that AI is going to create productivity for our organization. And it won't. It transfers it. It transfers it from somewhere. It's taking it from something and moving it over here. It's shifting it around. It's repurposing it in different ways. And unfortunately, this myth that AI is creating productivity has a lot of senior leaders going, so we should just be producing something from nothing. That's why we need 30% less people because stuff just comes. And it's like, it doesn't though. It's coming from somewhere. You're taking attention off something. People are giving up success somewhere else so that they can do this other stuff. And I think those metrics help us or you all as HR leaders look at it and go, wait a minute, like if we look at these tea leaves, there's some work we got to do here or we're going to burn ourselves up in the atmosphere.
I love that holistic take on metrics and no BS again. So I appreciate that. And it's also a good segue to sort of, as we're segueing now into that notion of human-centric AI.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you and opposed to what?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
alternative?
So so the alternative is we believe that AI, we buy the lie that AI is like a superior species than us and like we're just on the evolutionary journey and eventually AI is going to just eat us alive and wipe us out. Like that's such a not human centered way to look at it, but it's tragically even a lot of, I mean, I know a lot of the very senior people in the AI space out building this stuff, and they believe that. Many of them actually believe that we are just building our replacements, which is really sad because I'm like, what are we doing then? Like, why are we doing this? Um, I think human centered is recognizing it's an alien intelligence. It doesn't think like we do, and it's built to not serve us in a subservient way, but like it's designed to be an enabler for us. It should be working towards making us better at things. But I think that requires recognizing there are things humans are inherently good at that AI really sucks at. And so being able to go, this isn't about competing with one another. It's not about going, is AI going to win or are we going to win this war? It's about going, we've distinctly determined that there are ways we work well and AI works well, and there's things AI is good at. So let's maximize that. And then that allows us to maximize the human capacity. This week, I talked about it on my podcast. It dropped today, and then I'm writing about it next week. KPMG has taken a lot of heat because they wrote a 100-page tax prompt. And it's like, oh, great. This is the future of work. We're building books of of AI prompts that are just going to be used into the system and see this is us training our replacements. And similar to the MIT report, I'm like, do you know anything about this initiative? That is not what is happening here. And even KPMG has said that is not what is happening here. And when you really unpack it, this is like what everybody dreams of work becoming, like problem solving and defining these things so that you can bring AI in to do the things that you go, I really hate doing this. Like, why do I spend my time pulling reports and compiling information into a format? And I think that's really what human centered looks like. But we kind of got to get rid of some of these narratives that we're buying into to get there.
Mhm. And then clicking a little bit further down, how can we ensure that AI systems are designed and deployed in ways that genuinely prioritize human values such as ethics and equity, as well as well-being.
Yeah, I thought about this question, so I don't know if anybody's seen it, but there's a what I call probably one of the most frightening clips about AI I've ever seen, and it's it has nothing to do with politics, even though it's Tucker Carlson and Sam Altman. But anyway, he's asking Altman like, what do you prioritize? And Altman's open about the fact that he's like, well, I'm not really worried about the big moral, ethical dilemmas. I'm really just focused on how are people using the model and how do we optimize that. And that to me is like terrifying in the sense that if we don't define, and many companies just haven't, they have not defined like what does effective AI use mean for this company. They have not nailed that down. And I think that is how we ensure we don't go places that we don't want to. We actually have to define our ethical lines and our moral lines of like what are we not willing to do. I mean, Facebook took a ton of heat because they told their AI it was fine to have sensual conversations with children, and it's like, what, why did that, not that that guideline shouldn't have been in there, it's just the guideline shouldn't have said yes, just so long as you talk this way. And I think a lot of companies are not taking the time to go, hey, we really got to sit down and talk about this. Like, what are we as a company comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? What are our lines that we go, we won't ever go here? And I think sometimes people are afraid to because they're like, well, but what if it changes? And I'm like, there are some things you should just go, we're not going to do this. Like, we're not going to go here. And unfortunately, with generative AI specifically, nothing's off the table. As much as they say, well, we're putting safeguards in and all this, it's like you can jailbreak AI to do whatever you want. So you as a company really need to say, who are we? What do we stand for? And what does that mean? So that we can be clear on what we won't be, even in an AI world.
Who in organizations should be part of that conversation? I assume legal, HR, IT.
Legal and HR should absolutely be a part of it. I think this is where HR should absolutely, again, another opportunity for HR to come to the table, because a lot of the business leaders, and I love my business leader friends, but they don't always think of the downstream human effects of things. They just don't realize what this stuff is. A good example, like there's a reason Workday's in court right now, just getting ripped apart for its AI hiring agent. And it's like, well, because someone somewhere thought, hey, AI can talk to people and get this information and it'll smooth things up and it'll be great. And it's like, right, but like, what does it measure? How is it assessing? How is it giving the score? And how are we assessing that that score is actually based on their skills and not based on the color of their skin or the gender, or like, did anybody ask those questions? And it's like, oh, well, we think we pick top candidates. Well, what's your definition of top candidates, type of a thing? And so, yes, HR and legal should be there. I think this goes back to, though, where diversity is huge.
Mhm.
Going back to that clip of Altman, one of the scariest things in that clip is they said, well, how do you define your moral framework? And he's like, well, I mean, it's just kind of like how I grew up. oh, 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 that's great. Like, I'm glad your individual experience is how we are defining the technology that is being used by the world to set our trajectory. This is one of those areas where it's like, if the room is not a diverse mix of functions, genders, like ethnic, like if it is not a diverse group of people who all feel comfortable, that's the other thing, which is why trust score is so huge. It doesn't matter if you've got a diverse group of people in the room, if a certain group of people are like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything though, because if I do, I will get fired. Like, it has to be the kind of room where people can go, hey, look, like, I get on paper that sounds great, this cannot be an area we go, and here's why, because this will brush up against this and we will find ourselves here, and actually have a room where people go, that's a great, thank you for raising that was uncomfortable, I didn't really want to hear that, but I'm actually glad you did, so that we can incorporate it into things.
Yeah, and that's actually so interesting that there only certain types of people are having certain conversations about AI, it feels like. And to what you just referenced what Altman said, I actually was in a workshop the other day around shifting AI narratives from the narratives that are currently told, and then how might we reimagine future narratives. And it was kind of interesting as we were in our breakout group, we realized that everybody except for one in this workshop were women. There was only one man in the entire workshop. And we are like, it's interesting who is having this kind of conversation about AI and who is
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is not representative, but it sort of illustrates a little bit what you said. So I think
But
we
I
need
think
to
to that
really,
point, I think
you
this
know,
goes back to right now, there's this idea that it's about faster and more. We just got to go
mhm,
faster and more, and we got to beat whatever. Like the AI arms race is on, both geopolitically and just corporately. It's like, well, we just got to move. And unfortunately, that usually diversity is seen as a barrier to that. Because like we don't got time for
oh,
that.
it's going to slow down.
It's going to
Okay,
slow
we
it
have
down.
to involve more people, and then they
Right.
have
We
concerns, and we have to address them. And okay,
Right.
yeah,
Oh, I can't
yeah,
deal with this person who keeps asking these
yeah,
really good questions that we are might kill us in the end, but like, knock it off. We can't get a decision made.
yeah.
And unfortunately, this is where it's like you got to go slow to go fast. And that's why as much as people are like laughing at this KPMG thing, I'm like, they get it. They spent months with a diverse group of people in a room making a 100-page AI prompt, arguing, debating, outlining all this stuff. KPMG went, yeah, that's good. That's not bad. That's not a waste of time. That's where we should be. And I think more companies need that. And it's not about, is it who's smarter? No, everybody's bringing a different lens. And this, more than ever, we should be valuing that prime time. And the nice thing is, I think for HR leaders, that's not a squishy HR thing. It's like, no, this is critical. Do you want your business? I have one person I'm working with where I'm like, we're going to be focusing on keeping you out of jail and keeping your company solvent. And
Mhm.
it's that level of seriousness that you're dealing with when you are not taking this seriously.
So speaking about role, what role should HR and L&D play when it comes to human-centric AI transformation? How do we need to shift our mindset, our roles?
So, I mean, to be fair, there's a reason we're often tagged as the organization of no. And I do think we have to recognize we got to adapt. Like we can't go, but what if this might like we got to up our risk appetite a little bit. We have to be able to. I think the other big thing that we need to be doing with this, though, is being able to tie human centricity to business and be able to explain why human centric isn't the squishy thing that makes people like to work here. It's what keeps us out of court. It's what keeps us from, ending up in the headlines. Like the last thing you need right now is to have an AI scandal on your hands because it can destroy decades worth of trust in minutes, type of a thing. And so I think it's us being able to connect the dots between those so that it doesn't just sound like we're saying no. And it doesn't just sound like we care about squishy metrics that are actually holding the business back. And I think, if we can do that um, by helping them connect the dots between people and technology and business, it helps. And I will tell you, they don't want to hear it. But if you do it right, you can at least speak it in a language where they're like, I mean, there's plenty of times I'm in meetings where I'm like, look, you can ignore what I'm saying. That is ultimately your right to do that. But here's what's going to happen if you do. And it's now on your shoulders, just so you know, because I have said it. This will happen to you. And when it does, you're accountable and it is now documented because we have discussed it. So risk is all in your hands. And I think that kind of intensity at least makes people go, do we really want to like proceed or at least not have accounted for some of this stuff? And I think that's how we can really help.
I'm just curious how often you've seen HR being part of these conversations. So a recent Gartner research that I was stunned by revealed that CEOs think the CHO is the least AI savvy on the executive team. And I believe only 30-something CIOs bring in the CHO into AI transformations. Although Gartner also says when the entire executive team partners together, success rate of AI transformation is in the 70
Yep.
percentile.
Yep. It goes way
Have you
up.
seen that reflected, like when you work with companies that the CHO is not invited to these conversations? I'm just curious if you have seen that borne out, or
No.
are they, or
It's
and my in my mind, it's disastrous.
it's disastrous. And really what's happening right now is most companies are doing what lots of companies do, which is we'll bring HR in at the end to
Yeah,
make sure we're
to
covered legally.
layoffs and layoffs, probably,
Layoffs,
right? Yeah.
layoffs, and
Uh,
legally. And
uh,
like CHROs are getting the thing, we got to get rid of 30%. And it's like, wait, where'd that number come from? Like, what are you talking about? Well, we've already decided and we've already told shareholders this is what's happening. So help us make sure that happens. And it's like, huh? Or it's, hey, we are doing this with AI. Like, how do we not get sued? And it's like, you've already implemented it and now we're supposed to do it. And unfortunately, because AI moves so quick, it's even worse. So it's a huge gap. It's a huge gap. And it's part of why I'm so outspoken and doing as much as I can. Because to be fair, I don't always blame the business and tech leaders for some of their decisions for going, well, they don't really they don't add any value to things because they're just kind of waiting to be told what we're doing. So we're just trying to tell them what we're doing and then they can help us bridge that. And I think that's where now more than ever, I'm like, this is an opportunity for HR to lead the
mhm.
discussion. I mean, honestly, a lot of board meetings, I'm like leading the conversation. Like I'm telling the CIO what they need to do. I'm telling the COO how this is going to work. And we have that potential right now, but you've got to know it.
Mhm.
Because if you go in there just saying, human centric, we want to improve engagement, trust, they're just going to be like, oh, shut up. Like we've got a business to run type of a thing. But there's a way you can do it where they sit back and go, okay,
And
all
what is
right.
that? Lead with the
Yeah.
business strategy, or
I mean, it's about being able to lead with how AI transformation is actually a people transformation. That's like one of my biggest things is I'm like, AI transformation is people transformation. And at first, I met with a CEO the other day who he got on the call and he's like, look, I'm only taking this because you're a referral. Like I am actually supposed to be I'm looking for somebody who has like a background in AI engineering. And I'm like, give me 10 minutes. If you're not convinced, fine. You can move on and go find some tech head who will tell you all the latest models and all this stuff. And um, we let's just say it didn't end after 10 minutes because he's like, holy crap, you're right. I'm thinking about this all wrong. But right now, there's not people having that conversation.
hmm.
And we need more of it. And I think that's where HR has an opportunity to be the one driving it.
Hmm. On the L&D side, somebody had put another question in the chat that I want to weave in. I'm wondering how AI could be used for or support leadership or manager professional development, if at all.
Yeah. So this one's an interesting one because right now, and I'm pretty hard on my former L&D leaders. Right now, when it comes to leadership development and just learning in general, kind of the big narrative is personalization and AI coaching. We're gonna use AI to build more stuff, populate things faster, and give people what they want. And I'm like, but that defies everything we know about human behavior. Like, as much as we'd love it if people just sat and went, you know what I want to learn today? This. I'm going to go learn that. Like, they don't. They don't. They
Not as
need
adults, right?
direction, right? They,
Hmm.
they need direction. They need to know they have a gap. They need to do this. And so, when it comes to leadership development, going back to you now can assess a leader's capability far better than you ever have been able to before. And AI can help by picking up all these data points, by analyzing things that we all would love to, but we're like, when do you have time to sit and listen to a leader's conversations and their one-on-ones with an employee and go, hey, here's your gaps. Here's what you're not doing. We didn't have the luxury of that. AI can do that now. And so the ability to assess and actually say, Nicole, I know you think you're a great leader. You're not. And here's why. And here's the
No, no, no,
specific
no.
examples of what you're doing. But here's the good news. Here's what you can do to improve on it. And now instead of going, well, I actually do think I'm good at this. Well, the data says otherwise because we actually listened to 37 of your last one-on-ones and they sucked. So we're going to fix it. Okay. And that actually gives somebody the opportunity to go, oh, okay, like I want to get better and I want to
But
see
that
I'm
makes me
getting better.
yikes. Sorry that somebody's listening in on my one-on-ones.
But see, I
Um,
think this goes back
Makes
to
me yikes.
trust. This goes back to, well, the thing is, it's happening whether you want to know it or like, that's the thing.
Okay.
If most people knew that literally everything you're doing on or near an internet connected device is being uploaded to the cloud and analyzed, they would probably crawl in a hole and never come back out. But it's like, it's the reality of things. And I think that's where organizational trust is so important. Do your employees trust that what you're doing with it is ethical, moral, like that you're doing the right things? If they don't, you're cooked. But if they do, then it's like, look, and it's about including them in that. Hey, look, we're not going to analyze your one-on-ones without your consent. Like, we're not here
Mm.
to police what you're doing. However, this is access to things that we do have. If you would like to know how
Like
good
you
of a
could
leader
opt
are you?
in. If I could
Yeah,
opt
right,
in,
right. You
I
are
would,
now part of this.
right.
You have access to this. If
Hmm.
if you don't want to go that far, like AI simulations are so easy to spin up now. I mean, my AI assessment tool is a natural conversation you have with somebody. It's AI, but you have it for 10 minutes and it's just engaging you in a dialogue. And then it spits back, hey, you missed this, you missed that. This is an area of opportunity, like all this stuff. So even if you're like, okay, we're not going to listen to all your one on ones, well, let's just set you up with something and let's see how you do so that we can give you that feedback. But I think
Mm.
that's where the possibilities are endless. And again, most people are like, well, let's give them an AI coach. Well, they don't know what questions to ask. Do you really want them getting coaching on something that you would go, no, like, no, 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 don't coach them on that because AI just tells you what you want to hear. That's the scary part about AI.
Yeah. Mm.
It fuels your own best and worst tendencies. And so I I had one company that engaged me and they're like, "Hey, we want your help implementing an AI coaching tool." And we did get to that, but we didn't get there first because I said if we go there first, this AI is going to coach all your top talent right out of the organization, and your best people are going to stick around and they're going to think they're awesome because the AI coach is going to tell them they're the best you've ever had, and you are going to completely tank your organization. And at first they were like, "No, well, see, we've already done the like process. We've decided on a tool." And I'm like, "Okay, well, do you want to do it right, or do you want to just do it so you can say you did it?" And we dramatically changed course, but it was highly, highly effective.
Mm. Interesting. And especially interesting considering that I believe now AI, Gen AI is used mostly like in private use for therapy and coaching related questions, right? So that's a
Which is
whole,
terrifying.
it is terrifying. So,
Which is really terrifying. And I think this is another risk that um, companies aren't taking into account. Emotional dependence on AI might be one of the greatest risks we are not taking seriously right now. Um, and I just even think I was in a meeting and I raised this concern. I'm like, this is a big problem. So Microsoft is closing their ties from OpenAI and moving over to Anthropic. Sounds like a harm, like whatever, who cares, whatever. And I'm in this room and I go, folks, did we not see what happened when GPT 4.0 went to 5 and people freaked out because their AI friend died? You think you're just changing your AI model. You are literally changing your people's coworkers underneath them. And so even little things like
mm,
this is who I talk to now. This is who I collaborate with. This is who I get. Like, are you focusing just as much as making sure your people are interacting and collaborating and are in a good space and have a support network? Because every company I know complains about how many silos they have. I'm
Hmm.
like, and now you're turning every individual into a corporate silo. Because they're like, well,
Mm.
why would I ask
Mm.
legal? I talked to a legal group the other day. They're like, we are so frustrated. So many people now come to us and they think they're 99% of the way there. And they're like, well, I worked with GPT and it helped me do the legal review. So you really should only just have to look at this real quick. So can you get it back to me by next Monday? And they're like, what? Your AI lawyer is doing your legal review. I'm sorry. Last I checked, like it doesn't know our policies and procedures and what we actually do and don't do type of a thing. But everybody's becoming their own little island. And that's a huge risk that companies are like, but it's great. Everybody's really effective and efficient. And I'm like,
Have you looked
what?
underneath the hood?
Well, we've been silo busting for like how many decades because we knew the negative effect it had on corporate performance. And yet we're like, oh, but this is time it's good because AI is helping with it. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, let me know how that goes.
Makes me think whether there's a limit to efficiency in organizations, but that's a whole different conversation. We are getting really philosophical now, whereas somebody had a more of an L&D question. Maybe we should take that one.
Sure. Yeah, we could do
Any
that.
suggestions for L&D introducing AI tools for functional skill development and team productivity?
Yeah. So I just did a roundtable with a group of CLOs and we were talking about this. And one of the things I said is, look, there's no universal playbook. Because one of the things that kind of came up was like, what are the things that every L&D leader should be doing with AI? And I'm like, wrong question to ask. Um, no, what you need to be doing right now is assessing your team's skills and your operating models. And you should be looking at what do we do? How well do we know how to do it? And what skills do we have in our team so that we can start to say, so where would we benefit most from AI? Because AI is oxygen, it's everywhere, it'll affect everything. It is the new electricity 2.0. So it's not a matter of, well, you know, do we use these AI tools? It's like, well, when might you introduce them and in what way would you do it? And I think that's where, when it comes to introducing them to the team, if you do that well, then you can start to say, hey, here's where we're getting started. Here's why. And here's how we're going to use it to enable success. And we want to see if it is successful, because if it's just making us move faster, that's not success. And I think by doing that, one, you're going to build trust with your team because they're going to know, oh, good, you're not looking at bringing in an AI tool so you can wipe out 30% of your learning team. But also, they're part of that because, again, at the end of the day, 90% of them are using the AI tools anyway. Don't you want them part of that? So they can say, hey, like, look, we tried this over here. Like, I didn't tell you about it, but I've been using this tool to help with this. It's actually not really working very well. These are some of the risks that we need to take into account. I talked to somebody the other day that they were talking about, they were anti-synthesia. They're like, these AI videos, like they're just a waste of time and whatever. I'm like, are they though? Like, explain to me your situation. And as we talked through it, we identified 5 use cases where they're like, oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. That actually would be a great place to implement that for that specific thing. I'm like, well, you already have access to the tool. Like, there you go. That frees up your team to focus on this other thing that is a more higher value add activity.
Mhm. Cool. So somebody asked a question, a no BS question. I
Sure.
mean, they were all no BS, but I really like this one. They're like, there's so many headlines and buzz about whatever companies are doing. Can you share some real examples of how companies have addressed any of what we've, discussed the last hour or so? Any any sort
Sure.
of real case studies, obviously anonymously, um, who have tackled this that are
Yeah.
beyond the buzz and the BS and the headlines?
So here's this hopefully will come as a comfort to everybody. Um, if you feel like you're behind, you're not. Like 90 probably 0.9% of what's out there is complete BS. Like anybody who tells you they've cracked this nut and like, yeah, we've got AI and we're crushed. I'm like, you're full of crap. No, you don't. Like you don't. So, you do have to be careful, even if you're talking to people who are boasting about like what they've nailed, with AI, because it's like, you have not done that. Nobody on the planet has cracked this. If KPMG is just getting to the point that they're like building this kind, you really think anybody out there is doing it? I would say most people are just in the early stages of even figuring out what they're doing and what's going on. I feel like almost everybody on the planet is in the middle of a Copilot or Gemini implementation. It's like, well, we're rolling out AI tools to the enterprise. They're trying to, yeah, see you, Kathleen. They're trying to figure out which tools are in their ecosystem. But I will say, one, I'll use an HR example of one thing that was really good. And that's one that actually goes against the narrative that AI for hiring is bad. I was brought in to help a company figure out how do we use AI to help with our recruiting. How do we actually create a better candidate experience? And so we actually broke down the recruiting process. And what we found was one of the biggest areas of opportunity wasn't necessarily like finding the right candidates. It was the follow up and engagement with candidates on like, where are we? Like, are we in the process? Like, how are things moving along? How do I get an update type of a thing? And it was actually eating all of the TA people's time because they're like fielding emails and trying to coordinate back and forth with stuff. And so we were actually able to like narrow down some really key communication tools and automations that helped streamline this so the TA people could focus more of their time on actually having human conversations and engaging with hiring managers to identify what are you really looking for and what so they were spending more of their time with the candidate and with the hiring manager and less of the time zipping emails over here and all this, and they improved their candidate experience scores big time because candidates knew, like they got follow-ups with like, hey, we did seriously consider you and here's why, like something they'd never had time to do before. The notes from the interviews were translated over into communications that gave candidates feedback. Here's the areas that we think you weren't a great fit for it, type of a thing. And candidates went, wow,
Mm-hmm.
thanks. Like I would apply here again because at least I feel like I, did something, and the TA people loved it. And it seems like such a simple like, wait, but that isn't the big sexy AI thing for TA. And I'm like, right, but that's the thing everybody hates and complains about. So that's where you should have leaned in.
Yeah, as somebody who works in employee experience, including candidate experience, it is one of the key pain points that always comes up. So I can totally second that would impact candidate experience by like multifold.
Yep.
I've got one last question for you real quick.
Sure.
What resources can you recommend for those who want to use AI to support the employee experience and or generally human-centric use of AI?
So, I mean, of course, I'm going to plug that they follow you, Nicole. I think you're doing a lot
Oh,
of really good stuff, and are
thank you.
involved in a lot of different things. So I think that's it. I do a lot of stuff to try and help people with this. Um, I think it really is about finding voices you trust. More than anything, if you don't trust me, fine, but find some voices you trust that actually are doing some things with this and follow them. Because again, this isn't about reports coming out of MIT. This isn't about data points coming out of Google and Anthropic. This is about what people are really doing with this. And the only way you're going to know that is by talking to people who are willing to be honest and who can guide you in that. And I think more than anything, that's where I would say I don't have like a list of,
Hmm.
here's all the people, but find those people and stay close to them.
Thank you so much. Again, I learned so much from you. Every time I talk to you, I feel smarter. So thank you. I'm sure our audience does too. Really appreciate you being here, taking
Yeah.
the time with us. And thank you everybody for joining and hope to see everybody at a future HR Hackathon Alliance event.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.